Ghost is with you, and today I will tell you 3 real scary stories about dating on Tinder by Reddit users. It will be very exciting and scary. Prepare yourself something to eat, and we'll start. I went through a real tragedy because of Tinder. It started on January 8, 2014, when I contacted a beautiful woman who, as I well understood, was too good for me. I'm in my early 50s, out of shape for a long time, overweight, but generally stable and quite adequate man. She is about 30 years old, with higher education, stunningly beautiful, elegant, and slender. However, after texting with her for a few days, I invited her to have dinner at a nice restaurant in the city center. To my horror, she agreed to dinner. I waited for her at the bar, and when she came in, I was speechless. She was so beautiful that it took my breath away. She looked taller than me in her heels. She was wearing a beautiful, short dress. I'd never seen legs as slender as hers. She greeted me with a dazzling smile, gently hugged me, and we were led to a table. The date couldn't have gone better. The conversation did not stop for a second. She also seemed to have a good time. We decided to continue communicating. We met a couple more times in bars. During one of these meetings, she said she had to go home, but she took a taxi to the bar, so I offered her a ride home, and she immediately agreed. Although we obviously had a good time together, at that time it seemed to me that at best I could only count on friendship with her, considering how different we were. When we got to her house, she didn't get out of the car right away. We continued our conversation. I offered to walk her to the door for a few more minutes, but she refused. Then she got out of the car and came to my door. She leaned through the window and kissed me quickly but passionately. My heart almost stopped. Then she leaned back and smiled. I was smart enough to immediately ask her out on the next date, and she agreed without hesitation. I was over the moon with happiness. I knew that this wonderful woman would have a huge impact on my whole life. It seemed that this was my destiny. Anyway, 2 weeks later we started seeing each other every day. Our relationship was developing rapidly, but something was wrong. I had a strange feeling that she was hiding something from me. She seemed to have deep feelings for me, but at the same time something was bothering us. Then everything opened up. We were sitting in a bar with her. We were fine, but she seemed distracted. When we were about to leave, she turned to me and said in a serious tone, "We need to talk." I thought, well, that's it. She realized that we were too different and decided to suggest that we stay friends. But what she told me was very unexpected for me. She asked me to listen to her without interrupting, and I agreed. She started by saying that she has deep feelings for me, but there is one thing that I need to know before I decide whether to continue our relationship. After these words, 100 different scenarios flew through my head. She's married. Maybe she's a dangerous criminal. Then I remembered that when we were fooling around a couple of days before, I lightly touched her breast and realized that she had implants there because her breasts were too hard, and I thought, oh my God, what a man. She looked at me and said with tears in her eyes that she had stage 4 breast cancer. She was diagnosed with a 3rd-degree tumor 4 years ago. She managed to defeat him with a double mastectomy, along with radiation therapy and chemotherapy, but the cancer returned, reached the 4th stage. She was going to resume chemotherapy in 2 weeks. I was crushed. She said she'd understand if I turned around and left. She wouldn't think I'd done anything wrong. In response, I repeated that I admire her, that I consider her an amazing woman, and if she agrees to have me by her side, then I would consider it an honor for myself. We held each other in our arms for a while. Then she said goodbye to me and drove home in her car. I cried all the way home. We spent one wonderful year together. I had to go to Japan for work, and she came there between chemotherapy treatments. She didn't cry and always looked elegant. Thanks to her, I learned what the word grace really means. We were very happy in 2014. She passed away 9 months ago, 15 months after we met. Thanks to meeting her and the support I gave her, I became a much better person. I love you and miss you very much, Jenny. And was going on my first date. It was Tuesday. There was a coincidence with a girl. Let's call her Elle. We corresponded for a while on various topics. She was awesome, and I asked her to meet me. I wanted to find a good place to meet on neutral territory, but closer to it. She invited me to barbecue with her former colleagues. At first, I was hesitant about this, because I don't think it's such a good idea to get acquainted. I gave up and went there anyway. However, everything went well. Elle and I got along well. But when everyone started to gather, she suddenly told me, "Well, let's write it off," and she's gone. Confused, I was driving home when suddenly a message came from her. "And now you could be at my house if you asked for it." I said it wasn't too late to do it. She wrote me her address. I turned around and drove quickly to her. She didn't live in the best part of the city, but I was sure that I would get it, so I didn't care about it the least. When we went up to her, she said she was taking stray cats home. I'm allergic to cats, but if I don't touch my eyes, then it's not a problem. Besides, I thought she should have known more than 4 cats. All these thoughts flashed through my head in a moment, and before we reached her apartment, she said, "By the way, I have 15 cats," and opened the door. It was dark in the living room, even though my eyes were out, but I could see a dozen pairs of cats' eyes staring at us. Then they all scattered like a bunch of cockroaches. I didn't turn back. I went into the room. When I crossed the threshold, it even seemed to me that I had walked through a wall, because the smell that hit my nose was so terrible that it seemed denser than air. Cat urine. There was no doubt that it was urine. 15 dirty street cats. There was no light in the room, but it seemed to me that I could clearly see garbage cans. As in TV shows about homeless people, and on these tanks, as on thrones, sat several cats who looked at me like garbage. Elle took me to her bedroom, which had a pungent smell of chlorine. My nose had already gotten so used to the smell of cat urine that other smells seemed unbearable to me. She said she had just cleaned her room with bleach, as if everyone did it. Any normal guy would probably have turned around and left long ago. I should have done the same, but I've already gone too far. We made ourselves comfortable on her bed, and she turned on Netflix. At that time, I didn't know that watching Netflix while lying in bed together had become fashionable. She chose some kind of movie, something like a Saw, and curled up next to me like a cat. While watching this horror movie, I repeatedly tried to hint to her, but she completely ignored the hints. We lay there for 45 minutes. Nothing happened, and I told her that it was 2 in the morning and I had to go to bed because I had to work in the morning. All the time I was at her house, I did my best not to accidentally touch my face with my hands, although from the moment I crossed her threshold, I knew that I would not be able to get out unscathed. When I was driving home, my eyes itched and watered. When I came home and looked in the mirror, I saw that my eyes were terribly red and all in tears before. The allergic reaction never lasted longer than 2 hours, and I decided that if I went to bed, I would be fine by morning. I was so wrong. I woke up from the alarm clock at 4:45 in the morning. My eyes couldn't see. I felt bad. My eyelids were so heavy that I could hardly open them. I turned on the light and saw it in the mirror. Despite the fact that I saw a horror movie monster very poorly, my right eyelid was swollen to such an extent that it almost touched my forehead and did not open at all. The condition of the left one was not much better. Moreover, both eyes seemed to be filled with sand. I had to call work and ask for time off. When about 2 hours had passed and the swelling still did not go away, I had to go to the doctor. The message too, I mentioned that my allergic reaction to cats turned out to be worse than I expected, and she never wrote to me again. I met a guy. In the photo, he seemed like a solid 10. He texted me, offering to meet for a cup of coffee. I agreed. He asked me to pick him up. I agreed again, because it's not difficult for me. I picked him up. We decided to go for lunch. He turned out to be cute and funny. After lunch, we were in no hurry to part. Then he pulled out his phone and told me that he had a son, a mother who took him to Washington. He didn't know the exact address, so he hadn't seen his son for several months, and he started showing me photos of his son on his phone, each photo in each folder of at least 300 pieces. He made me look at every single photo, accompanying each photo and video with a story about how and under what conditions it was shot. I felt very sorry for him, but I was so glad. When he finally left after he started showing photos, the whole date went to hell. He pulled a few more tricks, but let's not talk about it. That's all for today. If you liked this video, you can watch similar videos that are currently on your screens. Write your stories in the comments, and I'll like the most interesting ones. Thanks for watching.